This episode is meant primarily to be experienced in audio. Hello, I'm Miles. In 2013, I launched an idea that was all about providing an alternative means for people isolated by severe disasters to have access to information, communications, and essential supplies when everything else fails, using bicycles and whatever technology that we could fit in our pockets and our bags. We deployed on the day that Typhoon Yolanda made landfall in the Philippines. And for 4 months, the first 7 Bike Scouts teams rode thousands of kilometers in the most badly affected areas of the country for 4 months to provide access to people and communities. We called ourselves Bike Scouts, and since then, we've been the only continuously operating volunteer bicycle messenger service for disaster response in the world. Bike Scouts has served on the ground in all of the major disaster events in the Philippines, including Category 5 typhoons, severe floods, earthquakes, landslides, volcanic eruptions, and during the global COVID-19 pandemic. We use bicycles, people power, and technology to help create true local community resilience. I'm doing this podcast because I think the way we talk about climate change is too technical, and there are a lot of real-life stories about how climate change actually affects people in the real world that never becomes a part of the conversation. And with your help, maybe we can change that. Spokesnation is meant to be a community for interesting conversations about things that matter in our daily lives. The kind of things that we actually think about between the time we wake up in the morning and before we go back to bed at the end of each day. This is why I want to start by sharing the beautiful Filipino word, bayanihan. Bayanihan simply means people in a community helping each other solve local problems without the expectation of something in return. This is something that's practiced unconsciously in the Philippines since the beginning of our history. It's a big part of the local culture that's focused on family and community. There are interpretations of the word bayanihan that breaks down the word into 2 things: bayani, meaning hero, and bayan, meaning country or local community. When these 2 things are combined into a word, bayanihan literally describes the act of being a hero for your own community. It's a beautiful word. And what makes it even more amazing is the fact that it's not just an aspiration, but an actual part of daily community life of Filipinos. In the mountains of northern Luzon, for example, which is on the biggest island in the Philippine archipelago, there exists a practice within communities called pinadang, where community members will contribute whatever they can to any person from their village who gets the opportunity to go to school or find a good job in a big city. This is done because the people from these communities see the success of one of their own as a success for the entire community, and giving any support they can is them being a part of it.
Binadang is a Kankanaya term primarily used in the Cordillera region of the Philippines. It refers to the concept of communal unity, work, and cooperation amongst people to achieve a particular goal for the benefit of everyone in the community. It is similar to the more widely known Filipino term as bayanihan, emphasizing the spirit of working together for the benefit of everyone in the community. Binadang symbolizes unity, resilience, and the heart of their culture. It's more than a tradition. It's a lifeline connecting generations. It embodies a strong sense of community where individuals readily help each other, especially in times of need or during community projects. It's not just about providing assistance, but rather a way of life that prioritizes solidarity, compassion, and the well-being of all members of the community, including the marginalized.
That was Jaina Sabado of Bike Scouts Baguio Benguet, talking about the amazing community culture from her province. I think the best thing about community-focused way of life is that it's not unique to the Philippines. There are versions of it in every country that describe the same sense of responsibility for others. But people just don't realize that it still exists locally, because it's been overtaken by the individualistic nature of social media that has also changed the popular definition of what a community is. I've always been a big fan of new technology, and have been an early adopter of things that are relevant to my work in the creative industry, in sports, and now in my work about local climate resilience. The thing that I find sad about all of the technology that's available to us is that none of them are made to actually bring people together, not even social media. Instead of being a platform where people come together to do amazing and interesting things in the world, social media has become more of an amplifier for noise that attracts crowds to pay for cheap thrills, buy cheap products, and participate in random things that does absolutely nothing for anyone. In fact, when you take a look at it, the most important metric for social media is the size of the crowd that it can instigate or provoke. That's ultimately meant to be sold to the highest bidder. In this sense, social media sounds like an industrial farming system, and we are all essentially just products. I think it was important to point this out because there's a very big difference between the version of community that we'd find on social media and what an actual community really is. Bayanihan, or the culture of people helping people, and its many different versions around the world, is the most important thing that defines a community, in my opinion. For one, a real community doesn't require convenient connections as a prerequisite. In fact, I like to think that the absence of a convenient connection is actually a measure for the quality of a community. Let me share an example. When Taal volcano erupted in 2020 here in the Philippines, we got messages from Filipinos living abroad who wanted to send help to their relatives, neighbors, and other people in their community, including people that they've never really stayed in touch with through the years. The only reason they gave why they wanted to send help to their community is, wala namang ibang magtutulungan kung hindi tayo. Which is Filipino for, there's nobody else that will help each other but each other. And I've seen the exact same thing happen in all of the disaster events I've been to in the past 11 years of my work as a volunteer bicycle messenger for disaster response with the Bike Scouts project. I'll share a link to the Bike Scouts website in the description if you'd like to know more about what we do. In 2013, we rode to a small village at the very southern tip of Samar Island in the Visayas region of the Philippines, where Category 5 Typhoon Yolanda made landfall. There, we met a man riding a very small and very rusty bicycle that he had repaired using wood for pedals just so he could go out and look for food and other supplies that he shared with his neighbors. He rode more than 40 kilometers on his small bicycle to find a few kilos of rice that helped his family and others survive until help from outside arrived days later after an overgrown World War II airstrip near the village was cleared enough to allow a military plane to land with a cargo of essential supplies. In the aftermath of Category 5 Typhoon Odette in the Philippines, the house of a Bike Scouts team leader was badly damaged by the storm. But after doing what he could to make his family safe and comfortable, he rode his bicycle to look for water that he could buy using his own money so that people in his community who couldn't afford it would have something to drink.
Maying adlaw sa tanan. Ako day si Janril Amistoso from Cebu. It was December 16, 2021 when Typhoon Odette made landfall in the Philippines. Everyone is not ready for its impact, and one of the most damaged is Cebu Island. Electrical posts and trees were down, blocking the roads. Clean water was scarce. The price of goods is very expensive, from water to gas to food and power supply. Every barangay plea for help of the local government units, but it can't accommodate everyone. Within my reach is my bike that passes through every electrical post, fallen trees. I'm just a viewer of the Bike Scouts community page until I sent a message of distress. I've seen people getting water to canals, family walking on Christmas Eve, reaching out for a clean water for their 1-month-old infant. Construction workers forced to stay in construction site without salary and no aid. Everyone is a victim of this vicious typhoon. The supply of water is scarce, but luckily I was able to find bottled water in the grocery, giving the people I saw and talked to their current way of life. But I hope the water gives them hope to live and strive for more, just like our group Bike Scout Cebu.
That was Janriel Amistoso of Bike Scouts Cebu. He was a team leader in the story from Typhoon Odette. None of the people in these stories had to do what they did. They didn't even know most of the people that they helped. It was just a natural sense of responsibility for others in their own communities that drove them to do the right thing. And it wasn't because it was heroic, it wasn't charity or advocacy. They didn't do it to solve a problem or change the world. They helped simply because that's what people do in a community by instinct. It's what bayanihan is all about. It's not a conscious decision to do anything. It's just a natural human reaction to a very human need. It's a natural sense of responsibility for others. I like to talk about community and bayanihan, but I'm not an expert and I'm far from being qualified to teach anyone what it is and how to go about it. All of the things that I share about this topic comes only from what I've seen with my own eyes. I can't claim to have a template or a system for how to build a community and practice a sense of responsibility for others because I don't. But what I do have is an entire lifetime of real-world connections with real people in communities that practice the fading art of thoughtfulness. There's another beautiful word I learned from Japanese culture, and it's omoyari. And I genuinely hope that I'm saying this word correctly because I just looked it up online after reading about it in an article. I've always been amazed by how the Japanese have actual words for things that the rest of us only know as thoughts or feelings. From what I understand, omoi means thought, and yari is derived from yaru, which means to give. Combined into a word, omoyari is literally the consideration we give for others that leads to thoughtful action, which describes a Japanese practice of giving thought for the needs of others and providing for them without waiting for others to ask. This is beautiful because what it does is solve someone else's problem without requiring them to surrender their dignity. This, for me, is what's at the very heart of what community is all about. Omoyari is important because it's actually difficult for the rest of us to practice in a world where individualism has become fashionable or even a habit for most of us. In comparison, omoyari is the first thing that children in Japan learn when they go to school. And I just want to take a moment to say thank you to my good friend Kyota-san, who shared this amazing insight about omoyari with me. Now, before we go on, I hope it's okay to say thank you to a couple of amazing organizations that has been helping us turn Spokesnation into a reality. I wanted to say thank you to Business Grow of Tokyo, which is an amazing project founded by John Walsh that brings gardening back to a new generation in schools and for companies that are looking for a meaningful way to get back in touch with growing things. John is doing amazing work in Japan teaching school children and professionals in offices about the value of growing their own food in any open space that's available. I also want to say thank you to Limiton Solar of Switzerland, which is an innovative project by Dr. Edwin Lund that's building an incredible new way for people and communities to have access to solar energy in both urban areas and in off-grid places where it's needed most. Dr. Lund is sharing amazing technology directly to people in communities where solar energy can make a real difference in a way that puts people and actual need before anything else. So, going back to my story about omoyari, Kyota-san is also the best-selling author of folktales of Japan, horror stories of Japan, and underdogs of Japanese history. These are some of the best books about Japanese culture and history that a beginner like me have ever had the pleasure of reading. If you have time, I highly recommend that you check them out through the link I'm sharing in the description. Learning about omoyari has made me realize that the very act of talking about practicing empathy, for example, is actually a somewhat selfish thing to do, because our empathy is supposed to be felt by others, instead of used as a way to describe ourselves and our good intentions. We don't do this consciously, I think, but because we're not yet natural practitioners of omoyari. But we should, and I think we can if we try. The Filipino culture of bayanihan and the Japanese culture of omoyari are very similar. But I think omoyari is actually a super upgrade to the normal sense of community which is in bayanihan. The world is filled with lots of words and ideas about having a sense of responsibility for others because deep down inside, I think it's how we really are as human beings. I like to believe that there is inherent goodness in all of us. It's just harder to see it right now because of the grime from all the years I've spent on social media, where the rabid need for individual attention often masquerades as an aspirational quality that generates community. And I don't think it's the same thing, because there's a very big difference between crowds and communities. Crowds are attracted to noise, any kind of noise. If something loud is happening, people will gather, but it doesn't mean that they're a community. Communities are made up of people that are connected by a sense of purpose for the long term. People who become a part of communities are not there just to be a part of an audience that will clap after being entertained. We join communities because we want to be a practitioner of something that we believe in. This is why people in communities never disperse, unlike crowds. And communities never move on to the next viral thing, whatever that may be. Because having a sense of purpose and responsibility for others is not just a style or a trend. It's what we are as human beings when we allow ourselves to be just ourselves. Thank you so much for taking the time to be a part of the Spokesnation community. I really appreciate you being here. I would love to hear from you about your own experiences and maybe learn from them so I can make our future conversations more meaningful. This has been Spokesnation. See you next time.